Hello, welcome back to Animated Literacy. This is lesson number 36 from the Story Song and Action book. In today's lesson, we're going to be learning about Baby Barnaby and his bright blue banjo. Before we do that, we're going to do a little bit of review. So here is our last character we learned about, who is Farley Fox. And what is Farley Fox doing? Here he is floating in the water, and he's up here on his inner tube, and he also can float on a raft and on a ferry. And he's fishing with his back paws while he's fiddling with his front paws. And when we make his sound, we put our teeth on top of our lip, pretend to either fish or fiddle, and go. When we use that with our drum, instead of the drum saying rat-a-tat-tat, what does our drum say? Fat-a-fat, fat. Can you do that again? Fat-a-fat, fat. And instead of our bell going ding-dong-ding, what does our bell say? Fing-fong-fing. We took Farley's sound and we added it to our other characters that we've learned their story and song for. And we drew a picture of a farm and we drew a picture of a fox. Can you show me the sounds that we used to label the farm? Farm. Again, fishing, grabbing the high bar, moving your magic mop. Ready? Farm. And how did we spell that word farm? F-A-R-M. Let's do fox. Show me the sounds. See if you can do it before I do. Fox. So we're going to fish, go to the doctor, and relax. Fox. I'm going to gesture some words now. See if you can guess which one I'm using the correct sounds for. Ready? First I'm going to tickle, go to the doctor, and paint. So let's do top. Do it with me. Top. And what word does that make? Top. And what are the letters that we use to spell top? T-O-P. Let's try another one. Ready? Mop. Again. Mop. Can you tell me my word? If you guessed mop, you got it right. And what are the letters that we use to spell mop? M-O-P. Let's try another one. Ready? Dancing, going to the doctor, and painting. Ready? D. Oh, I'm sorry. For the last sound, let's do tickling instead. Ready? Let's do that again. D. Ot. Once again. D. Ot. Can you tell me my word? If you guessed dot, you got that one correct. What are the letters in dot? D-O-T. Okay, well, I hope you're spending lots of time practicing those and doing them over and over again so you get faster and faster at reading words. Today we're going to start out by accessing our prior knowledge, so we're going to talk about things we know. So one of the first things we're going to talk about is a banjo. So you can turn to your parent or your teacher and tell them everything that you might know about a banjo. Now, a banjo is my favorite instrument, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of banjos and where they came from. This is one of the banjos that I play, but banjos didn't start out looking like this. The banjo originally came from Africa, and they were made out of an instrument called a gourd. Now, many artists today like to take gourds and paint them, and on this gourd they've added some feathers up on top and put a beak in and painted it fancy, so they made this gourd into a bird. And a gourd has a really hard surface on it. If I shake it, I can hear some of the seeds that are still in it. But gourds aren't very good to eat. They're better for making things out of. And they all come in different shapes. So up at the top of the page here, you see some pictures of gourds in different shapes. And it was the gourd that they first made banjos out of hundreds of years ago in Africa. And they first called them a banjar. And here's a picture of some banjars that are made out of gourds. And what they would do is they would take the gourd and they would cut it in half, Then they'd take an animal skin and stretch it over the top. And now they would have a drum. Then they would take a stick and they would put it right through the drum. And on some of these you can see the stick coming right out the other end of the drum. And then they would get that skin real tight, and then they would stretch some strings over it so that they could play it. Then when the banjo came to the United States and to America, it gradually kept changing and becoming more modernized. So now this is a more modern banjo, and this is called an open back banjo, because when I turn it around, the back is open. But I've put some things in here, so there's a frog, and there's a cat, and there's a piece of foam to make it just a little bit softer sounding. Now some banjos don't have an open back like this. Some of them have like a plate or like a dish made out of wood on the back called a resonator. And this one has a neck that is bolted on, and so it doesn't come all the way out the other end. Then it has what's called a bridge. And so the bridge is this piece of wood that the strings go over the top of. Now if this were a drum, you'd play it like this, with drumsticks or with your hands or whatever. But instead of playing the actual drum, the strings play the drum. So what they do is you pluck a string, it vibrates, and the vibration goes down through the wooden bridge, and it makes the head of the drum. This is called the head, which today is made out of plastic most often instead of animal skin. But there are still some made out of animal skins, and that gives the tone to the banjo. The old way of playing a banjo was with your hand in the shape of a claw like this. And so today that's often called claw hammer, because you claw with it. And they tell us the reason that banjos were first played with claws like that is before televisions and radios and all kinds of electronics, farmers would go out and they'd work all day plowing their fields. And then they'd come in, and for entertainment in the evening, they'd get out their banjos and fiddles and play music. And after being in this shape all day plowing, they had a hard time stretching their fingers out. So they say that's why they played in that shape. And so the old way of playing was to hit the strings with your fingernail and then pluck with your thumb. And so that would sound like this. Played in an old time band like the one that I played a song for you on Farley Fox's fiddling story. That's the way I played. Well, then later people came along, the most famous of which was a man named Earl Scruggs, and they started putting picks on their fingers. So they would put a pick on the index finger and a pick on the middle finger, and then they'd put a pick on the thumb, and now they would start to play like this. And so this is probably the way you hear the banjo a lot played today. And your fingers have to go really fast. I'll come up here so you can see my fingers a little better. Song on the radio. So that's the way that the banjo is played a lot in today's world. So that's a little bit of information about a banjo. Another topic that we're going to be talking about today is parades. And here's a book about a parade, and this is a Skybrary book. And it's called Animals on Parade, and these animals are playing instruments. And another topic is bouncing, and this is a Skybrary book called Bouncy Mouse. So those are two books that you might read. And here's another book that's just called Parade. So we'll read just a tiny bit of this book. And it starts out this way. watchers gather, and so here's everybody starting to get together to watch the parade. A crowd waiting. Now they've all gathered and they've got a crowd waiting for the parade to come down the street. Here it comes. Parade. Flags flying. So oftentimes people march with flags and bands march in a parade. So you can talk about maybe you've been to a parade. Another topic for you to talk about is babies. And we're going to have a baby in this story. And so this is a book called All of Baby Nose to Toes. And this book is written by Victoria Adler. And it goes like this. Baby's got eyes, bright little eyes. You can see the bright eyes here. Round as pie's eyes. Just the right size eyes. Like an owl, wise eyes. Peekaboo eyes. Who loves baby's eyes? And this talks about all the different parts of a baby. This is another good book about babies. And this one is called As Big as You. And it tells us that when you were born, you were as big as a cabbage. And here's the baby in the cabbage patch. And you can see the cabbages are just about the same size as the baby. Your knee was as round as a radish. Your ear was as wee as a sweet pea. And that tells us about babies growing up. We're also going to be talking about bees in our story today. And here's a picture of a big bad bumblebee. And this is a good book about bees called The Bee Tree. And this is about a little girl who gets bored. And so her grandpa takes her out to look for a bee tree. And it's written by Patricia Polacco. What sound do bees make? Buzz. And so this book is just called Buzz, Buzz, Buzz. And it starts like this. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Now this has a chain reaction. Every time one thing happens, it causes something else to happen. And the bee stung the bull so hard. So here's the bull who got stung, and what's he going to do? That the bull jumped and ran away, making the cow so nervous. So the bee stings the cow, the bull makes the cow nervous, and she kicked the farmer and knocked over the pail of milk. So one thing causes another, that causes another and another, and that's called a chain reaction. This is a book about bees that buzz and other kinds of things that buzz. So after we read the books and we talk about things in the story, we're going to start with Baby Barnaby's story now. And here's a picture of Baby Barnaby. Now when Baby Barnaby was little, he would crawl around on the floor, and as he crawled around in his house, he came upon a banjo. And at first he went up to that banjo and he touched it, and it made a sound. Then he touched it somewhere else and it made a sound. And he touched it somewhere else and it made another sound. Well, at first those sounds didn't sound like music, but each time he went to that banjo, he made different sounds until eventually he could make a tune. Well, as he got better and better at playing at banjos, people began to notice. And finally, a famous band in town called the Boston Banjo Band found out about Baby Barnaby's playing, and they invited him to join their band. And so he was really excited about the first parade that he was going to be in when he could play in the banjo band. So now Baby Barnaby's marching down the street and he's playing his banjo and all the people are clapping and waving. And he didn't notice this great big bad bumblebee flying around. Well, the bumblebee bumped right into Baby Barnaby. And when the bumblebee bumped Baby Barnaby, he dropped his banjo and his bright blue banjo broke into tiny little pieces. Well, at first Baby Barnaby was very upset about his broken banjo. But Baby Barnaby was really good at fixing things. So he collected all the broken parts to his banjo, and he began using them to assemble a brand new banjo. And when he was finished, he played a banjo concert, and everybody at the concert was so excited to hear Baby Barnaby's banjo playing that they all clapped and cheered. And while they were clapping and cheering for Baby Barnaby, he bowed to his audience. And you can bow either by putting your hands out like this and bending, or you can put one hand over your stomach and one hand behind your back, and you can bow this way. So whenever we see our picture of Baby Barnaby and how he's playing beautiful tunes on his banjo, I want you to pretend like he's finished and all the crowd is bowing and you're Baby Barnaby, and I want you to bow for your audience. And when you bow, I want you to make this sound. Go B for Baby Barnaby. Now, if Baby Barnaby had a drum, what would it sound like? Are you bowing? Are you bowing? Baby Barnaby, Baby Barnaby. Barnaby's banjo saying, Barnaby's banjo saying, bat-a-bat, bat, bat-a-bat, bat. And what would his bells say? Bing, bong, bing, bing, bong, bing. So now we're going to learn Baby Barnaby's song, so warm your muscles up so you can gesture it with me. And Baby Barnaby's song is written to an old tune that we've used before, and I'm sure you know it. It goes like this. And if you guessed that that was Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, or A, B, C, D, E, F, G, then you know that tune. And so Baby Barnaby's goes like this. There's lots of bouncing in Baby Barnaby's song, so we're going to bounce first and sing this. Baby Barnaby likes to bounce. Can you do that? Baby Barnaby likes to bounce. Now we're going to bounce and then bend by bowing forward. Bounce and bend and play banjo. Can you show me that? Bounce and bend and play banjo. Bounce and bend and balance bees. So here he is balancing, and you can see in his picture he's balancing on one foot. Bounce and bend and balance bees. Bounce and bend in Boston's band. So here you are marching in your band. So let's do that again. Bounce and bend in Boston's band. But he bumped a bumblebee. But he bumped a bumblebee. Now to pretend to drop your banjo. And he broke his blue banjo. So let's try that again with all of our gestures. Ready? Baby Barnaby likes to bounce, bounce and bend and play banjo. Bounce and bend and balance bees. How can you make a letter B? Here, I put my stick up here and my B down here. Bounce and bend in Boston's band, but he bumped a bumblebee, and he broke his blue banjo. Let's try that with our tape recording now, and I'll point to the words while you sing and gesture along. Ready?
Baby Barnaby likes to bounce, bounce and bend and play banjo. Bounce and bend and balance bees. Bounce and bend in Boston's band. but he bumped a bumblebee, and he broke his blue banjo.
What's our sound for Baby Barnaby? B. Now when you get your paper today, here's Baby Barnaby's letter B, and here's his capital B and his lowercase b. So you can rainbow write over that, and then when you turn your page over on the back, I want you to think about some things from your life that are like Baby Barnaby's story. How many of you have ever been stung by a bee? Or how many of you have ever heard a bee? In our backyard, we have a trash can that bees moved into several years ago. And bees are really important for the environment because when they go to the flowers and they take the nectar from this flower, and then they go to this flower and then to this flower, they spread what's called pollen around. And that pollen is really important because without it, many plants couldn't grow the foods that we like to eat. So I've left those bees in that trash can now for several years. I don't want to bother them because they're out helping the food grow. So you could tell me about experiences that you have had with a bee. Or maybe there's a time when you've dropped something and it broke. So you might want to draw me a picture and write a sentence about something that you have broken one time or another. Another topic that we did was parades. How many of you have ever been to a parade or been in a parade? So you could tell me about a parade that you've been to or been in. And you can tell me about somebody that you know who is a baby, or you can tell me about what you remember from being a baby or what you were told by someone about a time when you were a baby. So I hope you enjoyed our story about Baby Barnaby and learning about a banjo today. And in our next lesson, we'll be learning how to draw and label some things that use Baby Barnaby's sound and letter. So I hope to see you then.